My husband is a general. At the tender age of 20, he forsook me to sacrifice himself for the nation. I single-handedly raised our children, managed the household affairs, and even secured a noble title for my offspring. Now, in my 60s, I chanced upon my son, who has become a marquis, entering a residence with my beloved grandson. The sounds of laughter emanating from within pierced my heart. It dawned upon me that my child was calling another woman mother, and that I had endured 40 years of widowhood while my husband had feigned his death. Upon uncovering the truth, a torrent of hatred surged within me. They all deserved to die. 1. Within the confines of the high-walled courtyard, laughter echoed in cheerful waves. A steady male voice inquired, "Is mother feeling well today? Did you find pleasure in the red coral I sent a few days ago? It is indeed a splendid gift from His Majesty, a remarkable treasure. Your filial piety is commendable." The grand piece of red coral had just been removed from my courtyard, under the pretense of being a token for my grandson to present to his esteemed teacher. Little did I know, he had chosen an elderly woman as his mentor. A sweet, clear voice chimed in, "Grandmother, Juno loves you the most. When can Juno live with you forever? That old woman is both ugly and fierce. I dislike her entirely." The kind voice of the elderly woman replied, "My dear Juno, wait until that old woman has passed, then grandmother and grandfather will return. But you, my clever little one, must not let slip a word. Juno is the smartest. I would never reveal it. My grandmother is someone else entirely. She is the best grandmother in the world. Oh, my clever grandchild, you truly are sharp." An aged male voice joined in, and the courtyard was soon filled with laughter and merriment. Leaning against the base of the high wall, a chill coursed through my veins. The man who called another mother was my biological son, whom I had diligently guided for 40 years. The innocent child's voice belonged to my beloved grandson. Yet now, they were in another large courtyard, addressing someone else as their mother and grandmother. I stumbled out of a secluded alley, feeling as if I had aged a decade in an instant. Who would have known that this courtyard was but a street away from the Duke's residence in the capital? It turned out my husband, who was believed to have died in service, had not perished. It appeared that the child I had carried for 10 months wished to acknowledge another as his mother. My cherished grandson had labeled me an ugly and fierce old woman. 2. At the corner outside the alley stood a coachman. Upon seeing me emerge, he hurriedly approached, visibly anxious. "Madam, you—" I waved my hand dismissively. "My legs are growing weaker. If I stand too long, I cannot endure it. Let us return to my residence." The coachman helped me into the carriage, hesitating before asking, "Did I truly see the Duke earlier, or was it an error?" I replied in a somber tone, "I merely stepped out for a stroll. Whether or not I found the Duke is of little consequence." The coachman nodded, albeit uncertainly. Upon returning to the Duke's estate that night, I dispatched someone to send the coachman to my ancestral home in Qingcheng, bestowing upon him 50 taels of gold for his livelihood. Subsequently, I began to secretly assign people to follow the Duke, while another group was tasked with searching for those who had witnessed the demise of the old general. As for Qingzhou, it was a place I was particularly keen to investigate. 3 days later, an unexpected guest arrived at the Duke's residence. A woman, adorned in luxurious silks and exuding an air of nobility, was escorted step by step into the main courtyard by my daughter-in-law. The gentle and virtuous daughter-in-law introduced her. "Mother, this is my child's aunt." The elderly lady slightly bowed, acknowledging, "I pay my respects to the esteemed matron." I maintained a composed demeanor, refraining from granting her a seat immediately, instead asking, "Zhuan, are you saying this is your biological aunt?" My daughter-in-law, Li Jiwan, responded softly, "Yes, mother. Aunt has been in Qingzhou and has come to the capital to visit me and Juner." "Qingzhou, you say," I mused, smiling, "since she is your biological aunt. She is indeed a distinguished guest of our Duke's residence. I wonder, has this lady found suitable lodgings in the capital? If not, I would be pleased to extend my hospitality." The gracious lady politely declined. "There is no need for your kindness, esteemed matron. I am comfortably settled in the residence in Qingsher Alley." "Qingsher Alley?" I nodded with a smile. "That is quite near. When you have the time, please visit the Duke's residence to keep Jiwan company." After a brief exchange, I feigned fatigue and excused myself from the main courtyard. As I retreated behind the screen, a flicker of deep-seated hatred betrayed my composure. This family, devoid of conscience, dared to bring such a person directly into our midst. They intended to stab me in the heart. 3. I had initially believed my daughter-in-law to be as oblivious as I was, only to discover that she had been aware of everything long before. Perhaps she and my dear son had been mocking me behind my back countless times. How blind I had been! At this age, nearing the grave, I finally understood the extent of the deception I had been subjected to. My husband had faked his death. My son had been replaced. My grandson had turned against me. My daughter-in-law had begun her deceit the moment she stepped through the door. In this Grand Duke's residence, I could not find a single relative I could trust. If that were the case, then none of them would find peace. The Duke, Shinsu, was preoccupied with state affairs. During breakfast, only my daughter-in-law, Li Jiwan, and I were present, along with the elderly woman. Through our conversation, I learned her name was Lian Suqiu, originally from Qingzhou. Though I maintained a neutral expression, my hands, concealed within my sleeves, had already formed into fists. Lian Suqiu. How could it be her? I would never forget the humiliation she had brought upon me. Yes, I had heard that name before, associated with my late husband's wedding night. The reason it was so vividly etched in my memory was that he had, inebriated, murmured that name repeatedly. I could not allow this. I had slapped him awake and forced him to vow never to utter that name again. Later, I discovered that Lian Suqiu was his childhood sweetheart's cousin. However, that cousin had long since married a wealthy man from their hometown before his marriage to me. Who would have thought that he would conceal this person in the capital, right under my nose? After breakfast, I dabbed my lips with a handkerchief and said amiably, "My dear sister, where do you reside in Qingsher Alley? I have a pair of exquisite pigeon blood stone ornaments I wish to send to your home." Ignoring my daughter-in-law's subtly disapproving glance, Lian Suqiu eagerly agreed. I instructed the elderly maid beside me to personally deliver them, demonstrating my regard for Jiwan's aunt. After discussing this, I inquired, "Today's medicinal chicken soup is excellent and nourishing. What herbs were used?" A clever maid stepped forward. "I cannot recall the other herbs, but there is a slice of ginseng that has been aged for 1,000 years. I nodded. "Such a fine medicinal dish. Save a bowl for my son." I then turned my attention to my daughter-in-law and her aunt, smiling as I raised my hand. "Jiwan is somewhat frail. She should have a bowl as well. Dear sister, would you care to try some?" Both women nodded. Li Jiwan took a small sip, then wrinkled her brow. I smiled sweetly. "If you cannot drink it, do not force yourself. Just remember to encourage the Duke to partake of it, as it is quite nourishing." Lian Suqiu continued to drink, praising, "The esteemed matron is truly kind to the Duke." I echoed her sentiment. "Of course, he is my only biological son. If I do not treat him well, who else shall I?" Lian Suqiu and I exchanged knowing smiles, easily catching the mockery in her eyes. After breakfast, I returned to my courtyard, and the elderly maid who had delivered the gifts approached me with a complex expression. I sent away the others, and she suddenly knelt before me. "Esteemed matron, it is true that in the residence on Qingsher Alley, I indeed saw an elderly man dressed in fine clothing, resembling our Duke to some extent. My husband had passed away at 20. Now, after 40 years, even the elderly in the residence could hardly recognize him. However, he is indeed the biological father of Shinsu. Even the slightest resemblance is sufficient for me to condemn him to death." Instead of anger, I laughed. "Indeed, that explains everything." As 2 months passed, the individuals I had dispatched began to return one by one. I gathered those secret letters, scrutinizing one in particular over and over until I stumbled upon a certain document that caused my hands to tremble uncontrollably. It was only when a liquid fell onto the letter, blurring the ink into a small stain, that I realized it was tears. After 40 years, I had long forgotten what tears were. Now, a mere letter had rekindled the deepest sorrows within my heart. With my husband deceased, I bore the overwhelming burden of managing the vast General's estate alone. After the passing of my parents, I took upon myself the family's legacy as the sole bloodline of the Zhao family to petition for a noble title. The late emperor, recognizing my father's contributions to the country, bestowed upon my son the title of Marquis, despite the pressures from the cabinet ministers. Although the title would be downgraded for subsequent generations, it still provided some protection for my descendants. For this family, I have poured my heart and soul, tirelessly managing our affairs even as I approach 50. Little did I expect that all my sacrifices would turn out to be a cruel joke. Shinsu is not my biological son. My true child perished in the treacherous conspiracy that unfolded 40 years ago. As this realization struck me, I could hardly contain the rage and hatred swelling within, and I coughed up a mouthful of blood. The letter was thoroughly soaked in warm blood, rendering it a mere scrap of paper. I swallowed the metallic taste in my mouth, steadying my trembling hands to incinerate all the letters. I shall discern the authenticity of these so-called proofs myself. The reason for collecting them was merely to help me clear the fog. I shall not confront Shinsu with these evidences to chastise his family, nor shall I relinquish them in exchange for a fate that could disgrace the Shin family. What I desire is the absolute annihilation of the Shin clan, the total collapse of the Shin family's legacy. What I have given can naturally be taken back piece by piece. Having meticulously dealt with all traces in the study, I staggered to the door, collapsing before the matron could arrive to assist me, losing consciousness. When I awoke, Shinsu stood by my bedside, his expression filled with concern. "Mother, you have finally awakened. Do you feel any discomfort?" I managed a feeble smile and replied, "Sewer is here. I feel no discomfort at present." Extending my hand from under the covers, he hastily came forward to support me in sitting up. I patted his hand, my gaze reflecting nostalgia and reminiscence. Perhaps it is merely a headache. "I still remember when you were around 14 or 15, you fell gravely ill, and I was so worried that I stayed awake for 3 days to care for you, which led to this chronic ailment." Shinsu's eyes expressed guilt and emotion. Mother has always been the most loving towards her children. I released his hand and turned my head. My greatest affection still lies with my dear grandson.
"Where is Yuna?"
Why hasn't he come to visit his old grandmother? Shinsu paused for a moment before responding. "He did come, but you were still unconscious, so I sent him away to do his studies." I gazed deeply into Shinsu's eyes. "Junior, like you, is a diligent child. Yet, Shinsu, I have raised you for 40 years. How could I not see through your lies? That grandson who once shouted that I was fierce and ugly now has a new grandmother. Why would he wish to visit me? Although I already knew they were not my kin but my enemies, the years of devotion I bestowed were genuine and untainted. My sorrow now stems not from the betrayal of those I held dear, but from the heartfelt sincerity I misplaced many years ago. As I age, my health continues to decline. I probed Shinsu. What could have caused my sudden fainting today? Shinsu expressed concern. Mother is merely overburdened with worries. Combined with her old ailments, the physician said there is nothing serious. I grasped Shinsu's hand. "Have you summoned a physician to treat me?" Shinsu's face was full of concern. "Of course, Dr. Zhang is most familiar with your health. I would not trust anyone else." I felt a wave of gratitude. "You are most thoughtful. Dr. Zhang is the most experienced elder in the Imperial Medical Academy, and I trust him implicitly." Shinsu conversed with me for a while before excusing himself, citing pressing official duties. I endured the discomfort of awakening and spoke in a low voice. "Bring someone in." The Dr. Zhang Shinsu had mentioned earlier was brought in, disheveled and restrained, with a shoe lodged in his mouth. A maid removed the shoe with a disdainful humph and tossed it aside. Dr. Zhang, once respected in the Imperial Medical Academy, was now subjected to such humiliation. His aging eyes blazed with indignation as he shouted, "Why does the old nobleman treat me so? I am the deputy judge of the Imperial Medical Academy." I raised my gaze and signaled to the maid, who, without hesitation, stepped forward and delivered a sharp slap to the deputy judge. Dr. Zhang was momentarily stunned, tilting his head in bewilderment. I feigned a frown and scolded. "Ah, such unruly behavior. Someone bring a chair for Dr. Zhang." Dr. Zhang, taken aback by my seemingly kind gesture after being struck, sat down in the chair with a perplexed expression. I spoke gently. "My health is poor. I am troubled to trouble you, Dr. Zhang. However, I am of advanced age and dread the thought of death. I wish to inquire about my condition." Upon hearing this, Dr. Zhang's brows furrowed with barely concealed anger. "Such matters can be answered without such theatrics, old nobleman." I smiled sweetly. "The servants are indeed unruly. I shall impose a severe punishment upon them." With that, I had a box of gold brought forth and opened it before Dr. Zhang. Only then did Dr. Zhang appear satisfied, stroking his beard and slowly saying, "The old nobleman suffers from chronic ailments exacerbated by excessive worry. With ample rest and a few prescriptions, it will suffice." I smiled faintly, devoid of any genuine mirth. Does the chronic ailment refer to my headache? Dr. Zhang cast a sidelong glance at me, feigning profundity as he nodded. I nodded in return, then turned my gaze to the box of gold. Given the effort you have put into treating me, would you accept this box of gold? Dr. Zhang stroked his beard again, glancing at the box of gold, his eyes gleaming with desire. Yet he pretended to be indifferent. If it is the old nobleman-esque gift, I would not dare refuse. I laughed heartily. Haha, Dr. Zhang is indeed jesting. I have something even better. Let me bring it out for your consideration. Upon hearing this, the smile in Dr. Zhang's eyes widened. I gestured for them to bring in a larger box. The box was thudded down beside Dr. Zhang, heavy upon the ground. I smiled. Dr. Zhang might as well open it and see. The contents will surely delight you. Dr. Zhang, stroking his beard, approached with feigned restraint, lifting the lid of the box. At a glance, he stumbled back in shock, then lunged forward, trembling hands opening the box. Inside lay a child tightly wrapped, their mouth securely gagged. I raised an eyebrow. Look, Dr. Zhang, how delightful. Are you not pleased? Dr. Zhang hurriedly removed the cloth from the child's mouth, desperately untying the ropes, crying out, a calamity. The grandfather and grandson embraced, weeping uncontrollably, creating a truly heart-wrenching scene. I gently pressed a handkerchief to the corner of my eye, feeling moved as I remarked, Dr. Zhang and your lively and clever grandson share a profound bond. Then, altering my tone, I added, in that case, I have discerned Dr. Zhang's choice. I commanded my attendants to separate the two and restrain the child once more. Dr. Zhang wept and bowed his head, pleading, Old Feng Jun, must it come to this? I tucked away the handkerchief and smiled. It certainly need not. Hence I shall inquire once more about my current state of health, Dr. Zhang. What is your assessment? Dr. Zhang lay prostrate on the ground, motionless for a while. I patiently waited with him until, in my moment of distraction, I accidentally knocked over the medicine the maid had brought. The bowl tumbled to the floor, shattering, with shards of porcelain mingling with the bitter, pungent liquid that splattered across the room, some pieces inadvertently landing on Dr. Zhang. Only then did he slowly raise his head, tears streaming down his face. Everything is as the Marquis wishes. An hour later, I had a palanquin prepared to escort Dr. Zhang and his grandson away, along with a chest of gold. I meticulously absorbed and digested the sordid truths that had come to light. It was not until dusk settled that I began to regain my composure. It turned out that the child I had painstakingly nurtured had long wished for my demise. I once believed I was the one who understood him best in this world, yet at this juncture, I realized that the wicked are inscrutable. As far back as 20 years ago, I sensed something was amiss with my health. At that time, my aged father had passed away, my mother was bedridden, and Shen Su was reaching the age to enter the officialdom. I was so overwhelmed that I wished to divide myself into 8 parts. My frail body seemed merely a consequence of my excessive toil. Moreover, Shen Su had earnestly sought out a renowned physician to treat me. After taking a few doses of medicine, my condition indeed improved. That esteemed physician was none other than the present Dr. Zhang of the Imperial Medical Bureau. It is no small feat for Shen Su, who had been plotting my fate for 2 decades. However, the poison administered was far too weak, and I had been particularly vigilant in my diet. Furthermore, he would not hasten my death, for his own ambitions hinged upon my survival. Today, I finally understood that his intention back then was to ascend by stepping upon the blood of my maternal clan. Over the years, Shen Su had never ceased his attempts to poison me, whether through the food I consumed, the fragrant sachets meant to ward off insects, or even the ink from the books I read, all of which had been tampered with. The sole reason I had managed to survive this long was due to the palace intrigue skills I had gleaned from my wet nurse before my marriage. Thus, I have always shunned incense, been particularly meticulous about what I ingest, and spent my leisure time studying medical texts. This, in turn, made it increasingly challenging for Shen Su to ensnare me, allowing me to live for over 20 years. During these days of my waning health, I uncovered a chilling truth. Regardless of Dr. Zhang's medical expertise, the influence my son wielded in securing his position at the Imperial Medical Bureau was considerable. Drawing from the resources I had painstakingly acquired for him, it would be exceedingly simple to investigate his affairs. His son is a ne'er-do-well, indulging in gambling and brothels, having squandered the family wealth which Shen Su had been supporting. Though merely a child, his grandson possesses remarkable medical talent, and Dr. Zhang dotes on him as if he were his very lifeblood. I am acutely aware of how to manipulate Dr. Zhang. Knowing that I have the capability to directly abduct his grandson, he would not dare to act against me, especially with my men stationed at his home under his very nose, ensuring he remains compliant for the time being. Most crucially, my days are numbered. After enduring for so many years, I have long lived enough. Before I depart, it is only fitting that I take a few down with me, for that is the nature of Zhao Zhenyi. Since I have yet to meet my end, it is only fitting that the fated should be someone else. I pressed a hidden latch beneath my bed and retrieved a small porcelain vial, the last self-defense weapon left to me by my mother before her passing. During these days of convalescence, my dutiful grandson, Xinjun, finally came to visit me. I caressed his head and smiled. Your father tells me you have been diligent in your studies. How are your academic endeavors progressing? A flicker of disdain passed through the eyes of the boy. Barely over 10, before he obediently replied, I have completed my assignments well. I withdrew my hand, my tone shifting to one of sternness. Jun, tell your grandmother, do you truly enjoy learning these subjects? Shun Jun gazed at me with innocent eyes. If grandmother wishes for her grandson to study, then of course he enjoys it. I shook my head, sighing. Having traversed the brink of life and death, I have come to understand. If Jun does not take pleasure in these pursuits, then do not engage in them. From now on, simply pursue what you desire. Xinjun tilted his head, puzzled. Grandmother's words leave me confused. I replied with a smile, your father is a second-rank marquis. In time, you will inherit his title and have your place in the court. You toil day in and day out, and it pains me to watch. Upon hearing this, Xinjun's eyes widened in surprise. Is grandmother truly serious? I nodded. In the past, I was mistaken in my rigidity toward you. Now I see clearly. Our marquis's heir need only be happy. I found myself softening toward this grandson. Let him enjoy his childhood before I depart. Soon, there will be no more opportunities for play. I narrowed my eyes, revealing a tender smile. In the past, I had been too harsh with Xinjun, and Xinsu often urged me to be more lenient. Now that Xinjun was no longer under my strict supervision, his natural inclination for pleasure and play emerged. Xinsu's repeated reprimands bore no fruit, while Li Jiwan had never concerned herself with the education of children. Now, when her son quarreled with her husband, she merely wept. Even Suqiu had come several times to offer comfort. However, she had never received any proper guidance and was prone to favoring her grandson, naturally shielding Xinjun. This left Xinsu with no choice but to seek my assistance. I sighed, helplessly saying, Su, you must also show some compassion toward your mother. I am bedridden and lack the energy to care for Jun. With that, I relinquished a significant portion of the household management to Li Jiwan. Without her acting as a mediator between father and son, the tension between Xinsu and Xinjun escalated. Li Jiwan had frequently visited my chamber seeking counsel. I shared everything with her without reservation, which elicited her astonishment. Mother is indeed wise. Mother is the foremost noble woman in the capital. She is incomparable to those common folk. I understood Li Jiwan all too well. She would support whoever was the beneficiary of her interests. In the past, when Suqiu remarked about reuniting after my death, Li Jiwan had embraced her as the matriarch. Yet, Suqiu lacked the capability to educate her children and often found herself in conflict with her husband, disturbing the peace of her household. Now that I had granted her actual authority and allowed her to reap the rewards, her ambition had naturally swelled. I waved my hand with a smile. Jiwan is intelligent and eager to learn, but I am truly fatigued, so let us conclude for today. Concern etched on her face, she replied, since mother is unwell. I shall not impose. I hinted subtly, do not forget your priorities while pursuing this minor skill. The Marquis has pressing matters. Do take a bowl of chicken soup to him and see how he fares. Her cheeks flushed with embarrassment as she replied, Mother, you manage even the smallest details despite your many responsibilities. I suggested, then Mother will teach you the final trick. Send the chicken soup. And remember to say it was brewed by your own hands. Li Jiwan expressed her surprise this. I smiled. The sentiment is far more significant than anything else. I heard that you and Suer have had some minor disagreements lately. In a marriage, there should be fewer grievances. If you soften your stance, Suer will surely appreciate it. Li Jiwan, touched, replied, "Thank you, mother, for your concern. As your daughter-in-law, I shall serve the Marquis well." I nodded, waving her off. "Go now, lest the chicken soup cools." After Li Jiwan departed, I rose from the bed and summoned my devoted maid to step forward. This maid had been with me for merely 4 months, yet she proved to be a loyal girl. I had caught sight of her one day, dejected, as she stood by the roadside, holding a straw sign pleading for passers-by to save her mother. I spent 5 taels of silver to bring her to my side. I named her Ling Chun, meaning listening to the spring's voice, welcoming a new chapter in her life. This girl was sharp-witted and clever, and in her, I seemed to glimpse the shadow of a departed friend. I called her to me and handed her a wooden box. The box was heavy, yet she held it with remarkable steadiness. I smiled encouragingly. "This is for you. Do open it." Inside lay a stack of silver notes and a handful of broken silver, along with her deed of servitude. Upon merely glancing at it, her eyes brimmed with tears, and she knelt, trembling. "Old Madam, you." I chuckled softly, assisting her to her feet. "From this day forth, you may leave at any time." She nodded, rising to support me. Seated before my dressing table, my murky eyes fixated on the bronze mirror. Reflected within was the visage of an elderly woman, her face etched with wrinkles, silver hair neatly arranged without adornment. Furthermore, I had Ling Chun apply some powder to my lips, enhancing the pallor of my complexion. A grand performance was soon to unfold. After days of recuperation in bed, it was finally time to stretch my limbs. A shrill scream shattered the tranquility of the Marquis's residence at dusk. A small maid burst into my courtyard, kneeling and weeping. "Old Madam, the Marquis is bleeding. Please come quickly." "What?" I gasped, hastily throwing off the covers and, with Ling Chun's assistance, donning an outer robe. Supported by 2 young maidens, I made my way to the main hall. By the time I arrived, the household physician was already attending to him. Shin Su lay on the bed, eyes tightly shut, intermittently coughing up blood. The 2 physicians were taking his pulse and administering acupuncture, yet none could alleviate his coughing. Upon my arrival, they seemed to find renewed purpose, reporting, "Old Madam, the Marquis's ailment is grave. We may need to summon the imperial physician." Trembling, I sat at Shin Su's bedside, tears streaming down my face. "A messenger has already been dispatched to summon Master Zhang. I implore you both to do everything in your power to save my son." I hinted, "There is still half a root of the imperial ginseng in the estate." One physician's eyes brightened. "The ginseng can sustain life. Perhaps it can revive the Marquis's spirit." I waved my hand, instructing Ling Chun, "Go, bring the ginseng at once." After a flurry of activity, Shin Su finally consumed a piece of ginseng, halting his hemorrhaging. He slightly opened his eyes, struggling to speak. "Mother." I wept, heartbroken. "My son, who has harmed you?" Shin Su's face was a portrait of confusion, and with another cough of blood, he uttered, "At dusk, I drank the chicken soup sent by Wan Yang." Li Jiwan, who had been weeping by his side, lifted her head in astonishment. "But my lord, I had no chicken soup. How could this have happened?" I gestured dismissively, casting a meaningful glance at Li Jiwan, and instructed the physicians, "Investigate the chicken soup." Li Jiwan, stunned, ceased her tears. "That chicken soup was clearly sent by you at my request." I covered my eyes to suppress my tears, lamenting, what a tragic fate. Ling Chun, filled with indignation, exclaimed, "Madam, how can you say such a thing? Do you mean to suggest our old madam would harm the Marquis?"
Li Jiwan, momentari li bewilderat, vehement li dania.
"That is certainly not the case." She then comforted herself. "Perhaps there are other reasons." The household physician approached me, holding a silver needle stained with black, his voice trembling. "Old Madam, the Marquis has been poisoned through the chicken soup." I let out a gasp, striking Li Jiwan sharply across the face. "Poisonous woman. How dare you harm my son?" Shin Su appeared incredulous, glancing between me and Li Jiwan, who had collapsed beside him. I had exerted no restraint, leaving a clear mark on her cheek. Compared to Li Jiwan, Shin Su was far less likely to suspect me. He kept his eyes closed, his tone desolate. "Mother, please ensure the investigation is thorough. Do not wrong an innocent." I tucked the covers around Shin Su with a sorrowful tone. "Nor will I spare those who seek their own demise." Master Zhang arrived tardily, trembling as he glanced at me before continuing his treatment of Shinsu.
I.
With tears brimming in my eyes, spoke clearly, Master Zhang, please treat my son with utmost care. He must survive.
With that,
I led a throng of servants out of the main hall. Li Jiwan knelt at my feet, her expression one of despair. Mother, I swear it was not me. That medicinal soup came from your courtyard. I helped her to her feet, my tone filled with compassion. I would never wrongly accuse the innocent, yet I shall not spare the guilty. I turned to Ling Chun. Search the estate. Bring forth any suspicious items. I seated myself in the center of the courtyard, with Li Jiwan beside me. Unbeknownst to me, someone had relayed news to Lien Suqiu, and I watched in disbelief as she stormed into the Marquis's residence. The servants tried to stop her, but I stepped forward. Lien Suqiu glanced at me and at the flushed face of Li Jiwan, her voice frantic. What has happened to my Marquis? An old man hunched beside her, his face obscured. I wiped my tears with a handkerchief, feeling grateful. It is kind of you to come this late to see my son, but Master Zhang is currently inside attending to him, and his condition is uncertain for the time being. Upon hearing this, Lien Suqiu grew even more anxious, nearly in tears. I must see him. I regarded her with a strange look, then exchanged glances with Li Jiwan. Li Jiwan trembled. Auntie is merely concerned. I replied, the Marquis is being treated, and his life hangs in the balance. Any onlookers must keep their distance. Do you wish to disturb Master Zhang in his work? That would be most unseemly. Perhaps it was my words that struck a chord, for Lien Suqiu fell silent, though her tears flowed like a broken string of pearls. She clung tightly to the old man's hand, trembling uncontrollably. Yet, I did not shoo them away. It was not until midnight that Master Zhang emerged, his face a mask of panic. Upon exiting, he knelt before me, his voice quaking. The Marquis is deeply poisoned. He is beyond saving. Before I could react, Lien Suqiu let out a wail, no, and rushed inside. I grasped Li Jiwan's hand, lowering my voice. Jiwan, your aunt seems overly concerned for the Marquis, does she not? Li Jiwan wept uncontrollably, failing to heed my words, pleading, Mother, please, let me see the Marquis. I felt a wave of disinterest wash over me and released Li Jiwan's hand, thinking how these people were too lazy even to pretend.
Go.
Sun Sul lay upon the bed, his body contorted like a bow, his face twisted in agony. As I approached, a wave of dread washed over me. Is this the Qianji medicine? The once weeping Lien Suqiu halted her sobs, staring at me in confusion. What is Qianji medicine? My heart ached with despair. Qianji medicine is a royal secret poison. My child, who could wish you such harm? Lien Suqiu looked helplessly at the old man who had entered with her, and he silently nodded. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught the scene and felt a strange urge to laugh. What a remarkable family. Witnessing their child's demise yet managing to maintain such composure. Until a maid entered, presenting me with a packet of medicine. Upon seeing the wrapped parcel, Li Jiwan gasped in horror. This. I slowly unwrapped the cloth before her, revealing several pale brown, round pills of traditional medicine. Shinsu's face was utterly distorted as he struggled to utter a few syllables from his throat. Lien Suqiu's heart shattered as she pushed past me to grasp Shinsu's hand. My child, my child. The cloth slipped from my hand, scattering the traditional medicine across the floor. The old man by the bedside, upon seeing the pills, hoarsely inquired, where did this come from? Ling Chun declared loudly. These were all found in the lady's courtyard. The cloth is one she frequently uses. The old man lifted his gaze, his hawk-like eyes fixed intently on Li Jiwan. Li Jiwan protested vehemently. These are my personal medicines. What did they have to do with my husband's poisoning? I glanced at the old man, my voice trembling. Do you know what this is? This is strychnine. The old man spoke each word with deliberate weight, his aged voice seemingly wrung from his very lungs. Strychnine is an ingredient in Qianji medicine, highly toxic. Shinsu forced out a few words, his throat raw, accompanied by a metallic tang of blood. Poisonous woman.
With that,
he fell silent. I lamented as I pulled Lien Suqiu aside, collapsing onto Shinsu's body in tears, simultaneously checking for his breath and heartbeat. I finally exhaled when I felt his temperature grow cold. He was gone for good. Meanwhile, Lien Suqiu had somehow begun to clash with Li Jiwan. To be precise, She was unilaterally assaulting her. Li Jiwan, already heartbroken at the loss of her husband, now found herself wrongly accused of murder. Confused and sorrowful, she was struck several times before she finally thought to retort, "It wasn't me. It wasn't me who killed the Marquis. It was my mother," I sobbed, ignoring her protest. Lien Suchio glanced at my grief-stricken visage and slapped Li Jiwan across the face. "Wretched woman. Surely it was you. My son treated you well, even wanting to take a courtesan. How could you resort to murder?" I halted my cries, staggeringly stepping forward to seize Lien Suchio's wrist. Shoving her back forcefully, "What are you saying? Shin Su is my child. When did it become your place, you madwoman, to entangle yourself in this matter?" Even as Shin Su's body lay cold, his chamber was inexplicably lively. Li Jiwan continued to wrestle with Lien Suchio until she shouted, "That medicine was given to me by my aunt." The old man, who had been assisting Lien Suchio in countering Li Jiwan, paused in his actions. A fleeting smile crossed my face, and I feigned assistance for Li Jiwan, forcefully pushing Lien Suchio aside with her hand. The motion sent me tumbling to the ground, pretending to faint. At that moment, hurried footsteps echoed, followed by Ling Chun's cry, "Someone help! Old Madame Feng has been pushed down." I did not remain unconscious for long before awakening. Ling Chun, seeing me awake, immediately approached and whispered, "Old Madame, that old hag is dead. She was pushed down by the lady and hit her head." I gazed at her with pity. Lien Suchio appeared more spirited than I, having also fallen but still alive. Clearly, her demise was not some divine decree. She had consumed ample of that nourishing soup. In a single day, 2 lives were lost in the Marquis, prompting even the local officials to investigate. Yet, I was astounded to learn that the old man claimed Lien Suchio's old illness had recurred, and Li Jiwan was not to blame. As for the Marquis's death, it was merely Lien Suchio's malevolent heart, using her niece's hand to bring about his demise. I could only wonder how the mother and son, now united in the afterlife, perceived these events. Thus, it was a momentary pause, yet the Marquis donned mourning attire. Speculation arose regarding the aged old Madame Feng's passing, but no one suspected the young Marquis. I feigned excessive grief, claiming to have fainted multiple times, thus avoiding Shen Su's funeral. Li Jiwan, holding back her sorrow, managed the funeral rites for her husband. However, her lack of experience led to numerous blunders, causing the Marquis's reputation in the capital to plummet, never to regain its former glory. Shin Jun had lost 2 of his closest kin in a single night. The world felt as though it had collapsed. Li Jiwan was too preoccupied to console him, and he came to me, wailing. I embraced him, sighing deeply. Alas, what a tragic fate your mother has. How could she be so intolerant? I sighed several more times before coughing up blood. Despite my repeated urging, Ling Chun did not depart. In front of Shin Jun, she made arrangements for my comfort, then took him downstairs, soothingly stating, "Old Madam is overwhelmed with grief. Young master, do not disturb her tranquility. If you wish to know anything, I shall answer truthfully." I was unaware of what Ling Chun conveyed to Shin Jun, only to find out later that she had even informed him of my near-death state. I patted Shin Jun's head, gently reassuring him, "Juner, do not be sorrowful. He would not witness my demise, for before that could happen, he would first see his father. His own transgressions were minor, but his lineage as Shin Su's child was burdensome. I would not allow their tainted bloodline to persist in this world. For I had realized that my child was suffocated the moment they replaced him. They would not even grant my son a sliver of life. What right had I to show him compassion, even the slightest? My vengeance would not be foolish enough to merely cut the weeds without uprooting them. Knowing that I could not be harmed nor could the truth be unraveled, and with her own son distancing himself from her, Li Jiwan seemed either disheartened or devoid of interest, spending her days in the small Buddhist hall, avoiding human contact. As half a month passed, my health continued to decline. Ling Chun remained by my side, her eyes red-rimmed, as if she had been secretly weeping. I laughed at her. "I am neither your father nor your mother. If I die, you will merely lose a source of livelihood. Why weep so sorrowfully?" Ling Chun wiped her tears, lamenting, "Old Madam is the kindest to me. Second only to my mother. I have been so disrespectful to treat you as my own grandmother." My vision blurred slightly, and I smiled. "Ling Chun, tell me about your life. Living is truly devoid of interest. I long to hear stories. Wiping her tears, she proceeded to recount her life's tale. After finishing, she continued with matters concerning the household. When she mentioned an old man who often lingered outside, I sat up. Ling Chun, now devoid of tears, looked at me curiously. That old man has repeatedly requested to enter the manor. When the gatekeeper asked whom he sought, he remained silent. So I instructed the gatekeeper to prevent his entrance. Yet, he comes every day, and the servants regard him as a madman. I instructed Ling Chun, prepare a bowl of sweet porridge for the young master, and tidy up your belongings. Allow that old man to enter. After that, you need not return to the manor. There is a token for exiting the manor in the small box. Keep it with you. Listening to Chun was momentarily taken aback, her eyes reddening once more. I retorted with ire, there is no time for coaxing you. Depart from the Marquis's residence and attend to your mother. Without hesitation, Chun knelt before me and bowed her head, saying, Old madam, I know not what you have endured, but those wretches undoubtedly deserve a fate far worse than death. If there is a next life, I wish for you to fulfill your heart's desires and have a life of tranquility. My eyes brimmed with tears, but I feigned strength, urging, hurry and leave, do not delay my time. A bowl of creamy custard was set upon the table. My legs grew increasingly unsteady, yet I managed to shuffle to the table, trembling hands adding a few drops of a colorless, tasteless liquid to the custard. As before, Shinjun entered my courtyard, his face lighting up at the sight of the solitary bowl of custard. Grandmother, is it prepared for me? He exclaimed. I nodded with a faint smile, though a sense of melancholy lingered in my gaze. But do not eat it just yet. We must wait for someone. Shinjun appeared far more obedient than usual, nodding in agreement before inquiring, what of Sister Ling Chun? Are we to wait for her? I shook my head gently. Ling Chun has gone home and will not return tonight. He nodded again. It was not long before an elderly gentleman with graying hair entered, his murky gaze settling upon Shinjun leaning closer to me. Shinjun whispered, Who is this person? He looks so disheveled. I smiled. The one we are waiting for has arrived. Juner, you may now enjoy the custard. Upon hearing this, Shinjun beamed. Thank you, grandmother. I adore the custard from your courtyard. It is a flavor unmatched elsewhere. The old man took a seat across from me and sighed, his aged voice resonating. Junyi, do you recognize me? My smile did not reach my eyes as I nodded. However, I refrained from responding and instead addressed Shinjun. Juner, do you not recall him? You have called him grandfather before. Shinjun suddenly lifted his head, his spoon clattering against the bowl, custard spilling everywhere. Shunling, with his unkempt white hair, revealed a face that bore a resemblance to Shinsu's. Observing my expression, Shinjun hesitated. My grandfather has long since passed. Do not make unfounded connections. I smiled gently. Juner, the time has come. Bid farewell to your grandfather. Shinling seemed to grasp the underlying meaning of my words, panic flickering in his eyes. What do you mean? Zhao Junyi, do you intend to kill your husband? Do not speak such nonsense, I replied coolly. My husband died a heroic death for his country 40 years ago. Shinjun convulsed, his body racked with pain as he coughed up blood. Only then did Shinling realize that my farewell was intended for Shinjun. He rushed to Shinjun's side, accusing me with anguish. Even a tiger does not consume its young.
Yeah, he's your grandson.
I scoffed. He is your grandson. What concern is it of mine? I enunciated each word with venom. You conspired together to bring about my child's demise and nearly caused my own death in childbirth. Since that moment, you should have been prepared for the extinction of your lineage. Shunling, clutching Shinjun, who continued to bleed profusely, cried out in despair, I implore you, save my grandson. He is the sole heir of the Shin family. I stepped forward and struck Shinling, saying, the most putrid bloodline in this world is that of your Shin family. Why should it endure? I devoted so much effort and care to raise a son, yet he began poisoning me 20 years ago. My cherished grandson has never regarded me as a grandmother, scheming and ingratiating himself even to the point of abandoning his own mother. It was not my upbringing that was flawed. The essence of your Shin family is inherently corrupt. Ultimately, Shinjun breathed his last in Shunling's embrace, who then howled in agony and lunged at me, intent on my death. I drew a hairpin from my hair, enduring the excruciating pain that coursed through me and plunged it repeatedly into Xinling. With each thrust, his screams echoed in my ears. I had little time left to live. I desired Xinling to perish before my eyes. Warm blood drenched me, and I finally smiled with a sense of relief. My child, after 40 years, your mother has finally avenged you. I shall soon join you on the road to the underworld. And epilogue: when I opened my eyes once more, and a youthful maid knelt beside me, weeping, "Madam, the general has perished in service to the country." Unsteady, I grasped the maid's arm and cried out, "But what of my child? Where is my child?" The maid, mistaking my shock for madness, trembled as she replied, "The young master is with the wet nurse. Do not worry, madam. Take care of yourself." Releasing her hand, I ran towards the side courtyard, following my memories. The wet nurse was soothing a wailing infant in her arms, startled by my disheveled appearance. I approached, trembling as I reached out to hold the child. Seeing the baby in the swaddling blanket, crying in fright, my blood ran cold. It was Shinsu, not my child. My hands instinctively released their grip, but the wet nurse swiftly caught Shinsu. I fell to the ground, sobbing uncontrollably. Why could it not have been sooner? If heaven had any mercy on me, why not allow me to return to the moment of my child's birth? Even if it meant enduring a difficult labor. Even if it meant losing blood and suffering for 3 days and nights. I would have held on to protect my child and take vengeance on those who caused my child's death. But it was too late. Everything was too late. Even in Rebirth, my child had long since perished. Yet others merely perceived my sudden anguish upon learning of my husband's demise as an overwhelming shock, a momentary lapse into madness. The maids and nurses surrounding me offered their comforts. After I had wept enough, I feigned sorrow and grasped the maid's hand, asking, "Where is the general now?" The maid sighed. "He should be nearing the city soon." I feigned calmness and, as in my previous life, instructed that the entire manor don mourning attire. When Xinling's coffin was brought inside, I was nearly overcome with grief. Many of the soldiers who returned him were under my father's command, and seeing me in such distress, their faces displayed compassion. Tears streamed down my face as I bowed deeply to them, pleading, "Please, allow me to see my husband." The soldiers exchanged glances, taken aback by my words. Yet, considering that I had lost my husband so soon after our marriage, and my child was still young, their hearts softened. A young soldier helped me up gently, whispering, "Madam, it has been 3 or 4 days since General Shin passed. We cannot open the coffin at night." I trembled. "I am unafraid. I simply wish to see my husband one last time." After attending to the guests who came to pay their respects during the day, I returned to my chamber, utterly exhausted. It was then that my maid, a Jiang, approached me. She looked at me, hesitating to speak, unsure how to comfort me. A Jiang was not an ordinary maid. She was personally chosen by my mother for me, possessing medical skills. My mother had found her on the street, and she was 10 years my senior. Yet, I knew that beyond her medical expertise, a Jiang was more adept with poisons. In the past, I had believed that my father, a distinguished general, and my husband, a mere officer under his command, were both honorable. After marrying Xinling, he had risen in rank, and all of his family's honor was brought by me. Naturally, he would not dare to mistreat me. However, I had underestimated the malice of humanity. The audacious Xinling dared to target me and my child. Once, my hubris led me to be ensnared by treacherous individuals. Now, given a second chance at life, I have no intention of engaging in their insipid pretense any longer. If Xinling desires death, I shall not hesitate to assist him. Grasping A Jiang's hand, I inquired, "A Jiang, do you possess any potent poison?" Upon hearing my question, A Jiang's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Miss, I have brought plenty." In the past, I would have corrected A Jiang for addressing me as Miss, insisting she refer to me as Madam. However, now I am disinclined to cling to such so-called propriety. Nor do I wish to remain a mere lady of the Shin family. Selecting a seemingly diminutive porcelain vial from the assortment A Jiang presented, she cautioned, "Miss, this poison is rather dangerous. Once ingested, the body of the deceased will decompose more swiftly than usual, though its toxicity is somewhat mild. To ensure a fatal outcome, one must consume the entire vial." A genuine smile, the first since my rebirth, illuminated my face as I replied, "Thank you, Ajong, for your assistance." That night, I kept vigil alongside my mother-in-law, who appeared drowsy, though her expression betrayed little sorrow. She must have long known the truth behind Xinling's feigned death in my previous life. It was commendable that this elderly woman, nearly interred herself, managed to conceal such secrets. I tenderly remarked, echoing my past life, "Mother-in-law, you are of advanced age. Do rest, for I shall keep watch over my husband tonight." Eager to retire, my mother-in-law grasped my hand, uttering a few platitudes like, "Good child, you have suffered," before departing. I dismissed the attendants, and soon the young soldiers arrived as promised. They worked together to pry open the coffin, but just as they were about to lift the lid, I called out, "Thank you, everyone. I will remove the lid myself. My husband would surely not wish for his comrades to witness his disgrace." As I spoke, I pretended to stifle sobs, preparing to bow in gratitude. The soldiers close by supported me, their faces etched with concern. "Alas, madam, why do you speak thus? If that is the case, we shall take our leave." Another soldier urged, "Madam, you must be swift. Daylight approaches." Nodding through tears, I waited for their departure before straining to push open the coffin. Before me lay Xinling's youthful visage. Aside from his pallor, there were no signs of decay. He bore no resemblance to a corpse that had lain for 3 or 4 days. How foolish I had been in my previous life to harbor no doubts. Who could conceive such a vile scheme? Nevertheless, I took solace in the thought that after this night, I would rectify all wrongs and set matters right. Feigning grief, I checked for Xinling's breath and detected a faint pulse. His body still held warmth, though his breathing was weak, and his heart beat much slower than normal. As I wept, I searched his body, hoping for signs of awakening. Confirming his lack of consciousness, I retrieved the vial, mercilessly pried open his jaw, and poured the entire contents of the poison into his mouth. To ensure its efficacy, I pushed his jaw closed, facilitating the poison's descent into his being. Watching as his complexion began to take on a bluish hue, I finally closed the coffin as the sounds of urging from outside grew louder. Witnessing the nails being driven in one by one brought me a sense of relief. At Xinling's interment, I wept once more. Afterward, I remained vigilant, closely monitoring the happenings in the courtyard. For days, the old matriarch rarely emerged from the Buddhist hall. 3 days later, a piercing wail erupted from within. A hint of a smile crossed my lips before I turned, feigning anxiety. Bursting into the hall, I exclaimed, "Mother-in-law, what has happened?" Ignoring the maid's attempts to restrain me, I entered to find my mother-in-law wailing and striking a young woman, crying, "Didn't you say it was nothing? How can he be gone?" I approached to support her, asking, "Who is gone, mother? Please, remain calm." Yet, she was lost in her own turmoil, shoving me aside. However, her composure returned as she remembered Xinling's feigned death was concealed from me. Wiping her tears, she coldly asked, "What are you doing here?" Feigning confusion, I replied, "I intended to visit Su Gur, but upon passing the Buddhist hall, I heard your cries and was compelled to inquire." My mother-in-law covered her eyes. Forcing herself to maintain composure, "It's nothing. Jun-e, do visit Su Gur. In the future, avoid wandering into the Buddhist hall. It disturbs the tranquility of the bodhisattva." I suppressed a smirk. How ironic that she accused me of disturbing the bodhisattva's peace, a woman who deceived her daughter-in-law about such a grave matter. Knowing Xinling's feigned death and covertly complying, she must surely know that Shinsu is not my child. 2 days later, the head maid summoned me to my mother-in-law's side. I could surmise the reason for the request, yet I was taken aback when my mother-in-law commanded me to kneel. Kneel before her? Dream on. I stood my ground and asked, "Is there something I have done to displease you, mother?" To my surprise, my mother-in-law, unable to contain her temper, stepped forward and slapped me, demanding, "Speak. Did you cause my son's death?" Swiftly, I seized her wrist and forcefully pushed her away, responding, "Are you still half asleep, mother? My husband sacrificed himself for the nation. What connection does that have with me, a mere woman of the inner chambers?" My mother-in-law tore away her mask of pretense. "On the night of the vigil, did you not command the opening of my son's coffin?" I scoffed. "My husband has been away at war for 3 months. How pitiful that our child lost his father while still in swaddling clothes. What harm is there in wanting to see my husband one last time?" My mother-in-law's face turned ghostly pale, and she lunged at me, intent on striking again. Tell me, what did you see? Was my son alive at that time? I grasped her hand, devoid of the respect I once held for her. When I saw him, he was already unrecognizable. The sight terrified me into 3 days of sleeplessness. What nonsense are you speaking? Are you so overcome with grief that you've lost your senses? With that, I turned to leave, calling out, "Summon the physician for my mother. She requires treatment." Before my words had fully escaped my lips, a figure emerged from behind the screen in my mother-in-law's chamber, pointing at me with a shrill voice. It was her. She must have harmed Xinling. He would not have died. He ingested the drug of feigned death. My mother-in-law shot a venomous glare at the woman but refrained from voicing any objections. I regarded her with confusion. What do you mean by drug of feigned death? How can you ascertain that this so-called feigned death drug is not a genuine fatal poison? In my previous life, that drug indeed had been a remarkable concoction. However, I had returned with knowledge of my past, and no matter how effective a drug might be, it could never outwit fate. I turned my gaze toward the woman and addressed my mother-in-law. Who is this woman? Before my mother-in-law could respond, I coldly interjected. Zhao Juni, made it clear upon marrying that I would not share my husband with any other woman. How dare you and my husband conspire to deceive the Zhao family? Upon hearing me invoke the Zhao family, my mother-in-law finally realized that even as a daughter-in-law of the Shin family, I remained a woman of the Zhao lineage. My maternal family is formidable. They are not to be trifled with. Had Xinling still been alive, and had I a child to bind me, I might have endured some grievances. But with Xinling gone, the Shin family has lost leverage over me. Moreover, that child, my mother-in-law hesitated. She is my son's distant cousin. I retorted, cousin or paramour, a simple inquiry will reveal the truth. I am weary. I truly do not wish to squander my prime years once more within this abode. Having departed from the Shin residence, I commanded my servants to take me back to the Grand Marshal's mansion. In this second life, I once again beheld my youthful father and mother. All the grievances of my past life found an immediate outlet, and I embraced my mother, weeping uncontrollably. After a night of profound conversation, on the following day, my father ventured to the palace to seek a decree for my divorce. My mother, unwilling for me to return to that sordid place, known as the Shin family, instructed a jiang to gather all my dowry items and bring them back. As for Xinling and that woman's illegitimate child, I shall no longer concern myself with them. I shall observe how this child develops in the absence of my meticulous guidance and the resources of the Zhao family. If he proves to be excessively prosperous, I shall simply send someone to eliminate him. To me, Shinsu is but an insignificant insect, easily crushed beneath my heel. In this lifetime, I shall pursue the life that rightfully belongs to me. The end. Thank you for listening, and until we meet again in the next tale.